Okay. Special Topicx test. Special Topicx 2 test 3. We're going to do that, right? Everybody ready for that? Ready to jump into that? Winter blend gasoline what? Has a higher read vapor pressure, vaporizes more easily than summer blend gasoline, can cause engine drivability problems if used during warm weather.
All of the above.
That's all of the above. Read vapor pressure is basically a way that you measure the way that it evaporates and stuff. We used to do that when I was at the Ford dealership. We'd have to put a little coffee cup looking thing with a container of gas in it and a little pressure, and 160 degrees water in there, and then it would see how fast it built pressure and all that kind of thing.
Why would it cause engine drivability problems?
Well, the way the fuel vaporizes has got a lot to do with the way it ignites, so that's basically what you're looking at. And summer and winter blend gasolines are different too. So you need to factor that in if somebody's had one parked since last summer and it's in the middle of the winter, or vice versa. See, so vapor lock can occur when?
If a fuel line is restricted and as a result of excessive heat near fuel lines.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now, so what is vapor lock exactly? It's air forming in the fuel lines for whatever reason. If it's close to a hot place, something hot exhaust, or if your fuel pump is weak, it will do that too. Let me see what Tammy says. Hey, Tammy. Sure. Okay, Technician A says spark knock, ping, and detonation are different names for abnormal combustion. Technician B says any abnormal combustion raises the temperature and pressure inside the combustion chamber and can cause severe engine damage.
Both.
Everybody like that answer?
Yeah.
Both A and B? Whenever, what you're talking about, spark knock, ping, detonation, basically is whenever the mix lights off before the spark plug does, or if it lights off too early in the compression stroke. So if it can light off too early in the compression stroke for a number of reasons. If the ignition timing, if somebody's turned the distributor and got the ignition timing set too fast, because the ignition timing changes with engine speed, or if you've got compression, how would an engine get more compression by itself? How would the compression go up?
Would the intake be taking more air in?
No, not necessarily, but what about if the amount of space in the combustion chamber became smaller because of carbon caked on the cylinder head? You got me?
And that's why they sell types of gas that will clean that stuff out.
Well, it may or it may not clean it out, but the way that I used to clean it out when I had one that was, that it was pinging and I knew that everything else was right, is I would pour some Type F transmission fluid through it out in the parking lot and let it soften all that carbon that was built up in there, and then I would follow up with cold water, pouring it through there, and that would blast all that carbon off the inside there. A lot of that pinging would go away.
Is vapor lock earlier? Is that basically the fuel pump won't work?
If the fuel pump's weak, or like on Joey's truck, whenever you turn it on and the fuel pressure comes up, you got to run, and you switch it off, and the fuel pressure just falls off. It develops a bunch of air in the fuel line. Also, another problem is if somebody says, well, my car quit running, and they got the little Schrader valve on the fuel rail, and they said I mashed that Schrader valve and a bunch of fuel came spraying out of there. I mean, like this hose just sprayed out of there, and they say, so I know it wasn't fuel. Well, actually it was fuel, because what's pushing all that out of there is compressed air. Whenever you push that little Schrader valve, after you've switched your engine off or whatever, it should just go and just wet your fingers a little bit, because solid fuel is not going to come spraying out of there. See, the spraying out there is because you got squished air, and that's a vapor lock issue. If you have a vehicle with a metal fuel line that's running too close to the manifold, it'll boil the fuel in the line, make that vapor lock, and the engine's not going to run on air. See, so a lot of that kind of stuff.
The question I had was, I've had a fuel pump die before. What had happened was I had the fuel was about under a quarter tank, and I let it sit for a day. I had to park it because I didn't have money for gas, and then the fuel pump died, and the mechanic said there was sometimes if you get water forms in it, or is that
not just sitting a day with less than a quarter of a tank, or we'd have a lot more fuel.
A couple of days, about 3 or 4 days.
Well, that wasn't long enough either. I mean, if it was sitting 6 or 8 months, yeah, but not just 2 or 3 or 4 days low on gas. I don't know where that came from. Now, it probably was going to die anyway, and it just died because it was going to die, not because you parked it when it was low on gas. You know, that's mess that up. Technician A says research octane number is higher than the motor octane number. Technician B says the octane rating posted on fuel pumps is an average of the two ratings. You know what they're talking about there? It's at R plus, you know, it's got research and motor divided by 2. So you're basically averaging those two is what that basically amounts to. So number 4 is basically going to be a C, a Charlie. Technician A says in going to high altitudes, engines produce lower power. You ever experience that? Anybody ever drive in high altitudes and get just really disgusted with your vehicle because it has almost no power at a high altitude? Whenever you go to a high, yeah. But one way or another, if you go to the technician, let me say this: Technician B says most engine control systems can compensate for the air fuel mixture for changes in altitude up to a certain altitude. Usually, used to it was 4,000 feet. I don't know if they've changed it, but if you ever drive one that's got a carburetor and it's just set up, you know, the way that Cadillac is, you'll feel really strong power at sea level. But the higher altitude you go, the worse it runs. If you wanted to have to drive it up there all the time, what you'd have to do is advance the ignition timing and change the settings on the carburetor. Basically what you do there, because the ignition timing needs to be advanced because there's not as much oxygen, it needs more time to burn, so on and so forth, right? All right, so let's see. Which method of blending ethanol with gasoline is the most accurate? That's actually A. Inline. What can be used to measure the alcohol content in gasoline?
Graduated cylinder.
And how do you do it?
90 milliliters, 10 milliliters of water, and shake it up like
You can actually, if you've got a container that's got a straight, like a rain gauge, like you take a little rain gauge, and if you mark it with 10 even segments with a Sharpie, and you put 9 of those full up to that 9th line, and then you add to the 10th line with water and shake it up and set it down, the alcohol is going to go to the water and leave the gasoline. So when you gain some water, however much water you gained is how much alcohol you got in there. That makes sense? So that's how you can do that real quick.
Is there a way to separate it afterwards?
Well, if you're careful about your pouring, you can do that, you know. But okay, to avoid problems with the variation of gasoline, all government testing uses what as a fuel during testing procedures? Endolene. I like to tell that story about how I ran out of gas one time when I had my daughter. She was like 6 years old, and my son was like a year old. And I had him this little Volkswagen Bug, and I had like $50 in my pocket. But I passed the gas station, you know, we had in the clouds and all this, and I ran out of gas about a quarter mile past the gas station. I was behind Texaco Research down there in Port Arthur. And so I said, well, I got to get some gas somehow. So I told my daughter, stay there with him, and I'm going to go see. Walked about 100 yards to this little door on the back of this research laboratory, and I knocked on the door. This guy with a white lab coat came and said, yeah, what do you want? I said, well, I ran out of gas. I need to see about getting some, paying somebody for some gas or something. You know, I don't know what to do. And he said, just a minute. And he went in there, and he came out with this big square bottle that had a big cork in the top of it that said toluene. And he said, pour that in there, it'll run off that. Well, Texaco Research, I guess no guy knows what he's talking about. So I poured it in the car, and it fired up, and it ran better on that stuff than it ever ran on gas. I don't know how much that stuff cost, you know, but anyway, I drove it back to the gas station and filled it up. But anyway, let's see. To avoid topping off the fuel tank because of why?
Saturate the charcoal canister.
Now, I'll tell you how that shows up. In the olden days, we only purged the charcoal canister when we had EGR flowing, typically. That was the old days. The new days, with these newer systems, the OBD2 stuff, that thing is liable to decide to purge the canister anytime it decides it wants to. And George Baum brought his Dodge Dakota over here, and he said sometimes it'll sit here and it'll take the heebie-jeebies at idle. You know, just start idling rough all of a sudden. So I plugged the scan tool in, and I was looking at it, and when it started purging the canister, the engine almost died. And I said, George, are you packing the gas in this thing? You keep packing it in until you get it full? And his wife said, yeah, he does that. And I said, well, if you stop doing that, this problem will go away. And I had this other lady call me one time on a Ford Windstar, and she said, I'll be sitting at a red light behind a car, and it'll almost die, and then it'll surge ahead, and I almost run into the car in front of me. And I says, do you pack the gas? She says, yeah, I usually do. And I said, well, stop that. So she stopped that, and her surge probably went away. See, so if it starts purging the canister and it pulls a bunch of raw gas in there, when it'll almost die, and then the engine control will say, oh, we're almost died, and so it'll open up the idle speed control and it surges ahead, see. So anyway, just make sure you don't pack it in there. Pump octane is rated by what?
Both A and B.
Neither A nor B.
Because I say only.
Anytime you see only or always or whatever. Number 11, ethanol can be produced from what products?
Any of the above.
Listen to that guy. Any of the above. Switchgrass, sugarcane, corn. E85 means the fuel is made from what?
C.
What is it?
C. It's 85% ethanol.
85% ethanol, 15% gasoline. If you happen to put that, now let me back up, guys. You know this testing procedure I just told you about? Every now and then, somebody that's not too well informed will pull up there to a gas pump and they'll say, well, this ethanol, this E85 is pretty cheap. I think I'll squirt some of that in my car. If they don't have a flex fuel vehicle, they've made a problem for
I was
themselves.
about to ask about that. Is that with the flex fuel?
Flex fuel is for E85. Now, if you ding, ding, ding a bunch of that stuff in a car that's not flex fuel, then you got issues. And so the people at the dealerships that check the gas, you know, if you got one coming in running bad, and before you throw a bunch of parts at it and make a fool out of yourself and do all this other stuff, it's a good idea to take a fuel sample and check it, see what it looks like, check it with the alcohol procedure I was telling you about. I got graduated beakers in here for that, but you can make one real easy as long as the thing's the same size all the way up and down. And if you, sometimes you'll see 60-70% alcohol in there and making it run bad. And I don't know at the times. Here's something else. This one guy that I always like to tell about was working with me over there, and he actually was having one that he was fighting with. It was backfiring out the intake and all that kind of stuff. It was a Bronco, and it wasn't all that old at the time. It was a big Bronco, I guess, went out here, except it was a 92 model. And he fought with it for half a day, and I says, find out from them people what kind of gas they're using, because if they're putting premium gas in it, it's set up to run on 85 octane. You put 93 in there, it's not going. It burns slower. It's not going to work as well when it's cold, because this stuff happens in nanoseconds. I mean, everything. So he went out there, and I said, don't say, are you using premium gas? Ask him, what kind of gas are you using? And when he went out there, they said, we're using the best gas we can, 93 octane. He said, well, burn that out and put some 87 in there, and your problem will go away. And it did. See what I mean? So that's just really important. It doesn't all burn, and sometimes it makes carbon on the combustion chamber because it's greasier. You know, a lot of people. There's technical service bulletins from Chrysler and Ford that says don't put 93 octane in a car that's set up to run on 85. You're not helping yourself there. You're spending a lot of money you don't need to spend. Let's see. A flex fuel vehicle can be identified by what?
Any of the above.
Well, yes and no. We have 2 flex fuel vehicles among the ones that we inspect, and neither one of them has a badge.
But there are ones that do have that badge.
Yes,
So that
there are.
sounds yes.
But those 2 don't. But I mean, say any of the above. If I don't see emblems on the front, side, or rear of the vehicle, that doesn't mean it's not flex fuel.
That Ranger that I had to do the air conditioning, it was flex fuel.
Yeah, and you'll also have
There was one car you
Yeah,
had come in
didn't
here.
say it, but
and-
whenever I went to, according to the VIN number, click on there, all that said it was flex.
Yep, yeah, the Dodge Stratus that we've got that belongs to the college is flex fuel. That Caravan that we inspect is flex fuel. So I mean, you won't know unless you look at the usually the VIN number. Methanol is also called what?
Methyl,
Alcohol, B.
All of the above. Wood alcohol, methyl alcohol, methyl hydrate. Which alcohol is toxic? Which alcohol is toxic?
ethanol.
Methanol.
Oh,
First,
methanol was the one that you could drink.
you willing to bet your life on that?
No, I'm not.
I'm gonna set 2 in front of you. You pick the one that you can drink. Okay? I'm not gonna drink either one of them.
Lighter to both of them. And
Russian fighter pilots drink the alcohol fuel that goes in their jet planes because they use alcohol. You know, they fly their jets with alcohol. I mean, it makes them drunk, you know. I mean, but the alcohol, rubbing alcohol is poison. You know, I mean, if they make it poison, so people won't drink it.
They use alcohol to our little cars.
Yep. Yeah. Which is if you're putting alcohol in there, you're going to have to change the mixture and make it richer, because there's not as much energy in alcohol. Which is the most widely used alternative fuel?
Propane.
Listen to Joe. He's got it right. Propane. Propane. Liquefied petroleum gas is also called what? Propane.
I saw a car driving around in Lucia the other day that was running on natural gas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that they sell Crown Victorias. Ford sells them, natural gas vehicles.
Where do you refuel?
At a natural gas refilling station. That's why I wouldn't probably buy one of those, because I don't want to have to be limited in where I can buy fuel. I want to just pull up there and go ding, ding, ding. And you know what I saw this morning on the way to work? I saw a smart car at a gas station. I didn't think they ever had to stop there. Okay. Probably holds 2 gallons of gas or whatever. Okay. Yeah, they got a little 3-cylinder engine in them. Okay, let me see here. How much compressed natural gas does it require to achieve the energy of 1 gallon of gasoline?
91 cubic feet.
Are you serious? Are you making that up as you go? Or are you just taking a wild shot in the dark? 18 is 8. That's 122 cubic feet to achieve. Did you know the cup of gasoline has got the explosive power of a stick of dynamite?
Now I do.
If it's vaporized. That's why you got to be careful when you're working under the hood, you know. Explosive power of a stick of dynamite. This one automotive instructor is pretty sharp. He used to be up at Troy. You know, sometimes when you're in automotive at high school, the automotive instructor gets stuck with all of the students that are misfits that won't do what everybody says. And he says, if you send me a bunch of guys that won't do what I tell them to, you've got spark, you got gasoline, you got all kinds of stuff that can kill a bunch of people down here. So you need to be thinking about that before you send me the guys that should probably go to correctional institutions or something. And they said, we never thought about that. Let's see, when refueling a compressed natural gas vehicle, why is it recommended the tank be filled to a high pressure? Well, the range of the vehicle is increased, duh. Producing liquid fuel from coal or natural gas uses which process? Fischer-Tropsch is what you call that. You guys will learn that. You're going to hear these questions again and some more out of the same chapters whenever I give you your final exam, so you better be knowing these books. What color is diesel fuel dyed? What color is off-road diesel?
Red.
Red, off-road is red.
Yeah, you like that? Is it okay to put it in on-road diesels? I mean, I'm talking, it's illegal, obviously, but you know who's the worst offenders in that? Ambulances. They'll just, with the stroke of somebody's pen, they'll just let them use off-road diesel. And then they come driving in there with their power stroke diesel, and they say, this thing's not running right. And I'd screw the top off that filter, and I see red fuel in there, and I put it back on, and I said, burn all this out and run 2 or 3 tanks of regular diesel fuel through here, and then we'll work on it. But, you know...
I mean, I know the point, I know off-road diesel is cheaper because you're supposed to be using all like farm equipment and stuff. Is it made differently?
Yes. It's got more sulfur in it. It makes jelly around the tips of the injectors. It's just not, you know, the tolerances and tractors and stuff aren't. Yeah, it's different stuff. You know?
One of my relatives, I don't even know how they're related to me, but they own like a $250,000 RV, and they got pulled over once and had a cop check their fuel to see if it was off-road. But it wasn't. But
woo! Yeah. Yeah, that's because they wouldn't be paying taxes on it either.
Yeah.
What clogs fuel filters when the temperature is low on a vehicle that uses diesel fuel? Wax. Yep. The specific gravity of diesel fuel is measured in what units?
API gravity.
Very good, Joe. Joe's got a memory like a steel trap. A lot of stuff gets out of it, but he's got one. Okay. Number 24. What rating of diesel fuel indicates how well a diesel engine will start? Cetane rating. And what is cetane? Somebody tell me what cetane is.
Isn't that what's on the pump?
Cetane is actually a clear, colorless liquid that has perfect combustion properties. And what they do is they measure, that's the benchmark, and they measure the combustibility of diesel fuel against that. And so how diesel fuel compares to cetane, in other words, and typically, 40, 50 is going to be your cetane numbers. on regular, on good diesel fuel. But cetane is the perfect. But you're just basically, it's like 40 or 50% as good as cetane, and so cetane is basically your benchmark. Just remember that. And it's rated at 100. That's where they put the rating for that. Ultra low sulfur diesel fuel has how much sulfur content?
50 parts per million.
15 parts per million. And these numbers are changing all the time, so just don't try to hang your hat on that, because it may be 10 parts per million next year, or 5. E-diesel is diesel fuel with what additive?
Ethanol.
Vegetable.
Anybody know? Vegetable oil?
Really?
Yep. Is that true?
Yeah.
No, he was right.
Really?
Ethanol. I jerked you guys around, didn't I? Okay, biodiesel is regular diesel fuel with vegetable oil added. True or false? Now you know the answer to that one, don't you? 28. B20 biodiesel has how much regular diesel fuel? B20. Do the math, guys. B20 has how much regular diesel fuel?
80.
That's 80%. That's right.
20% bio.
What most diesel fuel is what grade?
3.
Somebody tell me.
4.
We have a bunch of yo-yos in here. It's 2, grade 2. All right.
That's what I said.
Come on,
You said-
Tracy,
you
why
said
did
4.
jump in with two?
I said 3, but I was talking about the third answer.
Oh, okay. Right. Who that reminds me of? Bobby.
Yeah.
Bobby will say 3. I'll say, no, that's what I meant. This kind of thing is Bobby. Okay. Most manufacturers of vehicles equipped with diesel engines allow what type of biodiesel? B5.
B5's a vitamin.
I got them in there.
Well, it's a vitamin too. Diesel fuel should have a rating of what cetane? I said it a minute ago.
I believe you said
45 to 50.
45 to 50. Very good, Mr. Moody. The higher the cetane rating, the what? Easier the engine starts cold, easier the engine starts hot, more power the engine produces.
Both B and C.
It's actually A. Slap yourself. The API gravity of number 2 diesel fuel should be about what? Ding, 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 ding. You need a lifeline?
any of the above. One of the above.
That's not even one of the choices.
C.
35. Technician A says diesel fuel has more heat energy than gasoline. Technician B says grade 2 is the grade recommended for normal service in automotive diesel engines. Which technician is correct?
B.
Charlie. Both A and B. Alright. Remember what I told you about diesel engines versus gasoline engines? On a gasoline engine, the fire goes out by the time the crankshaft is turned about 24 degrees into that piston stroke. So you're just slapping the top of the piston with a gas burner. But on a diesel engine, the fuel burns all the way down, so that's like pumping the crank. You know, that's why you got such legendary torque with a diesel engine. Most people don't know that, but anyway. But now we all know it in here, don't we? Okay. Let's see. To specifications for diesel fuel. Diesel fuel include what?
All of the above.
A.
That's actually all of the above. Ultra low sulfur diesel has a maximum of how many parts per million of sulfur? 15 ppm. A biodiesel blend that has 5% biodiesel in a conventional fuel is called what?
B5.
B5. Vegetable oil is sometimes called what?
Oh, it's WVO.
What about all of the above? Yes.
Two questions.
Yep. 2 questions left. Diesel fuel mixed with ethanol is called what in the United States? Do you guys like e-diesel? Is it good? The specific gravity of diesel fuel should be measured whenever a drivability concern is present.
True.
That is true. Okay, so basically, that's checking the fuel quality like we were talking about earlier on the other one. Okay, so everybody happy on it? Huh?
Ethanol, diesel in the United States.